Okay, hi, welcome to Introduction to Economics, and thank you for choosing Quickonomics as your supplementary education provider. Okay, before we start on the unit itself proper, we shall go through some basics which are necessary, for your understanding of the economics discipline. Okay, before we start each video, we will be showing you a mind map, of the whatever material is going to be covered, and this will be provided to you in soft copy as well, so feel free to download it in the website that is provided. Okay, so let's start. We will start by introducing graphs. Now, what are graphs? These are graphs. These are examples of graphs. Okay, if you look at this over here, okay, so we have a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. Okay, now this is the origin. As we go down the horizontal axis towards the right, the value gets bigger and bigger. Okay, and if we go to the left of the origin, it becomes bigger as well, but in a negative form. Okay, similar for the y-axis, okay, the vertical axis, okay, and we call the vertical axis the y-axis and the horizontal axis an x-axis. Okay, assuming that I have a point over here, okay, if I compare this point and this point over here, the value of this point will be bigger. Why? Because when we move further away from the origin, okay, the value gets bigger and bigger. Now, if you compare this graph over here, okay, to this graph over here, okay, I have given an identity to the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. Okay, let the vertical axis be the price of bread. Okay, and we'll compare that to the x-axis, which is the quantity of bread. So we are trying to look at the relationship between the price of bread and the quantity of bread. So now when there is a relationship, there will be a function. Okay, when we come to function later on in the video. Okay, as we can see, okay, in quadrant A over here, okay, all values are positive, which makes more sense than quadrants B, C, and D. Okay, take a look at this. Okay, let's assume, okay, that I have a point over here. Okay, so 3 pieces of bread is gonna cost me negative $1. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, and I cannot buy a negative quantity of bread, and I also cannot charge negative prices for bread. So it doesn't make sense. Therefore, in economic analysis, we will only focus on quadrant A. Okay, and when we do economic analysis, we can be understanding the relationship between many other variables, such as interest rates and national output, quantity of y, the quantity of x, price of x to quantity of x. Okay, and assuming, okay, that we have a point over here, okay, and we want to know what this is, and we do not have a number for it, we give it a term called x naught. Okay, and if let's say this point shifts over somewhere here, okay, we give it another name, x1. Okay, so looking at this, okay, the initial point is going to be called x0, and then when it moves, it's going to be x1, x2, x3. Okay, as for other variables, it will be the same, p0, p1, p2, p3. Okay, so that's for graphs. Now we shall move on to functions. Okay, as we mentioned, functions, okay, they actually measure the relationship of one variable to another. Okay, so this line over here is known as a function. So y, okay, which is this over here, it is the dependent variable, is equals to mx plus c. Okay, x is the independent variable, and what is m? M is the gradient of the slope, and c is the intercept of the slope. Okay, this is something that we should all know, okay, but this is just a little refresher in case you've been out of touch with your academics. Okay, and to calculate m, which is the gradient of the slope, we take the change in y divided by the change in x. Okay, and if it's upward sloping slope like this, it's gonna be a positive value. If it's a downward sloping slope, it's gonna be a negative value. Okay, what does the gradient of the slope tells us? It tells us how much y is going to change given a change in x. Okay, now for the intercept, okay, it basically means when x or y is 0, what is the value of the other variable. Okay, so you should be able to understand that. And now I would like to introduce this to you. We can actually connect a few graphs together, okay, to understand how more variables are related to one another. For example, if x equals to y and y equals to z, that means x must equal to z. It makes a lot of sense. So therefore, okay, if I have a graph here which shows the relationship between y and x, I can also show the relationship between z and x by connecting to a graph just vertically below it. Okay, the axis over here has to be the same. So here is x and this is x as well, but I can change this to z. So on the horizontal side, it works the same way. In a lot of economic analysis, we'll be going through this kind of things. Like we can look at the quantity demanded for y and x, and then we can zoom it down. Okay, we can bring it down to a price against quantity graph, like for example this, and we can actually come up with a demand. We can actually come up with a demand function over here for x. Okay, this we will see in chapter 2, which is consumer theory. Okay, next we'll be going through some graph dynamics. Functions move here and there, okay, and there are two important things that we have to take note of. Number one, endogenous changes. Okay, endogenous changes and exogenous changes, they are also known as economic disturbances. Okay, such as a change in price, a change in quantity demanded. Okay, anything that changes the model that we are studying. Okay, for endogenous, just remember that it means inside. So any variable that changes inside of the model causes a movement along the curve. Let's take this for example. Okay, this is a simple demand curve. It's the price of x plotted against the quantity of x, and this is the demand curve. Assuming the price of x, okay, has gone down from P0 to P1. Okay, so price has decreased. What will happen to the quantity demanded? We move along the curve because we know that price is an endogenous variable. So it moves down the curve to B. So the new quantity demanded has increased from x0 to x1. Okay, so now let's say we move, okay, to the exogenous part. Okay, exogenous changes, okay, it causes shifts of the functions. Now, for example, if let's say, okay, the price when we are looking at x, okay, let's give x an identity. For example, x, okay, are markers. Okay, so now there has been a new form of markers, okay, something that never runs out of ink. Okay, so the demand for this is going to decrease. Okay, so when the demand for this decrease, okay, is an exogenous variable, so the demand curve will shift backwards. Okay, in this example I've given one that the demand curve has shift outwards, okay, but it's the same thing. Okay, the important point to take note, okay, is that exogenous changes causes the functions to shift. As for endogenous, it causes movements along the curve. Okay, we will be going through more of these examples in the later videos. And now, introducing equilibrium. Okay, the definition of equilibrium, okay, is where economic forces balance, okay, and it will not change. For example, demand and supply. Okay, so we label the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity by PE and XE. Okay, and there will be a short run equilibrium and a long run equilibrium. However, there is no stated definition for the short run or the long run, because it depends when it comes to different topics of economics that we are going through. Okay, and do not worry, this will be covered to you, okay, when we progress later into the unit. Lastly, okay, graph analysis. We will take a 4-step approach when we answer certain questions. Okay, number 1, we have to state our assumptions, okay, as well as the purpose of using the graph. For example, in macroeconomics, my assumptions might be, okay, this economy has a flexible exchange rate, okay, and it has got a fixed prices and wages, for example. purpose, we will be using the ISLM model to identify how the national's output change in accordance to interest rates changes. Okay. Number 2, we have to state the initial equilibrium. Number 3, we will talk about the economic disturbances in both the short run and the long run. And lastly, we will talk about the final equilibrium. Okay, I have come to the end of the video. Okay, some of these things may look very confusing to you, but it is important because I need you to know, okay, the basics, and this is just a slight overview, okay, of how questions are going to be answered. Okay, as we go on, okay, into deeper topics and we go on to more videos, you will soon see how all these things, okay, will start to fall into place. And this is the most important framework, okay, of how we are going to tackle this introduction to economics. Thank you.